Okay, so now we're on to the sanding day. Just let it dry overnight, it should be fine. What we're gonna do is hit it with 80 grit and then 120 grit. If you do have to go lower, say 60 grit, you'd wanna go 60, 80, 120. We're gonna be using two different sanders. We're gonna use the RO 150, which is the 6-inch festival sander. It's this one right here. It's gonna work through the bulk of the material, with flat areas, make it go faster. And then we have the RO 90. That's gonna do the corners. This garage door has beveled edges. So we're gonna use this sander to get inside that beveled edge. And then this garage door also has the windows here with the sashes, so we're gonna use the sander for the sashes. When we sand, we always stay with the grain of the wood. We're not gonna go against the grain, so you're not gonna see me sanding like this. I'm gonna go with the grain of the wood. And then when I'm sanding up on the sashes and around the windows, I'm gonna be extra careful, and I might even turn the speed down on the sander down a little bit, just to make sure I'm not getting it to run up on the glass, because this will scratch the glass. So we'll go through and hit everything. This garage door, we don't need 60 grit on it. We're just gonna hit everything with 80 grit, and then we're gonna come back and finish it with 120 grit. We don't ever wanna go above 120, because it's gonna laminate the wood, it's gonna close down the pores, and it means that not enough stain is gonna soak in, which means that you're not gonna get as much protection, and it's also, it's not gonna build the sheen and everything, and the color as we would expect with a 120 grit. The 80 grit, usually you can kind of see some swirl marks from the sandpaper. That's the reason why you have to go 80 to 120 to get rid of the swirl marks, and then swirl marks should be gone, and we know the sand's going to soak in. So I'll just kind of demonstrate how I'm going to do this. If you're working with two people, that's the ideal scenario. You have one person kind of working ahead with the big sander, and then one person coming behind with the details. So this person will come through here and hit all these beveled edges, hit all the corners, hit the sashes, kind of behind that person that's hitting the majority of the sanding. So I'll start with the 150 here. Okay, so this garage door is a solid wood garage door. Some of the garage doors that we've restored in the past is actually a veneer panel, so you can sand too far and get through that kind of natural wood veneer on the outside and get through to what is more like a plywood surface if you get too aggressive with sanding. So if you're sanding a garage door that's a veneered panel garage door, you just have to be extra careful not to get too aggressive. You know, don't tip the edge of the sander one way or the other too much. You want to kind of keep it flat, because if you tip it, especially with the 150 80 grit on there, it works through material pretty quick, and then you're going to start exposing plywood, and we're going to have trouble after that. So I got this panel sanded with the 150 80 grit. Now I'm going to hit it with 80 grit and the Delta sander with the RO 90. I'll hit these grooves here first, and I'll kind of hit all the details. This person's kind of the person that's in charge of making sure everything is nice and consistent, and anything that was missed with the 150 you hit with this. So I'll get started. So I'll say that when I'm doing this Delta sander, I'm trying to keep my pressure into the corner and not wrapped around this edge, because I don't want to deform these edges. I don't want to change the shape of them. So, and I'm not putting very much pressure on it. I'm really just letting the sander do the work and the sandpaper do the work. More passes is better than a lot of pressure and only 1 or 2 passes. If you have some stain that's stubborn to get out. Something else you want to look out for when you're sanding with this Delta sander is to check between changes in level in the wood. See, there's two different panels there, and if there's a change in level, that 6-inch sander might kind of skim over it and not actually sand down into the surface. So you'll want to check to make sure that that 6-inch sander did sand it. If not, hit it with this Delta, even if it's a flat area. So you're going to want to check everything with this Delta sander. You're kind of the person that makes sure that everything is good before we start staining. As I was sanding the sashes, I realized that these were just put on with double-sided sticky tape. It's kind of strange that it was done that way, but since it is, we're going to actually take off we already took off all the sashes, and we're going to sand these independently. So these are just put together like this, where these pop out. So I switched the attachment on the RO90 from the Delta to the round, put 80 grit on here, and instead of trying to sand those, which this isn't the case every time, a lot of times these will be fixed in there and we'll actually have to sand these when they're fixed. But since we did take these off, it's going to be a lot easier to do it with these removed. So I'll just take each one of these, and I'm in the orbital mode. As I finish these, I'm going to put these back together to make sure that we know which one was which for each window. And when I'm sanding these, I'm being real careful, and also when we remove these, real careful, because this is obviously a weak joint. We break one of these sashes, it's really going to hold this job up to try to find a repair for it. So here's a photo in the middle of our sanding operation, showing what it looked like before and what it looked like after, and sort of what our expectations are. So after the garage doors are all sanded down, again the 80 grit and then 120 grit to finish, we're going to take a leaf blower and blow everything off. You'll see that we also remasked the outside edge and the bottom to cover the cement with a 24-inch plastic. And after everything's blown off, we'll go ahead and start staining. So this concludes part 2, which is the sanding process. We'll get into part 3 next, which is the stain application.